Yoga Teacher Hotline.
Hi, it's Samantha. I'm just wondering, how can we get students to turn up to their class earlier rather than bang on their start time or a little bit late? We do start on time, and then students that keep coming in late are disrupting the class. I need help, please.
Now, one of our most submitted questions has been variations of this one. What do we do? How do we deal with people who are late all the time in our classes? So it's interesting that that was one of our most submitted questions. So obviously it's an epidemic of lateness. And wherever you're holding these classes, you're going to have some late people. And how do you manage that? Because yeah, some of the problems that happen when people are late is that it's disruptive. It's disruptive sound-wise. Sometimes you have to move mats around while everybody's trying to get centered and focused, and oh no, that person's late, and now I got to move the mats to fit them in, and so on and so forth. Now, if you're in a scenario where you do have some control, where you get to be the one who to make that policy, then I recommend getting very clear for yourself. What is my policy? What is my boundary? So for me, for example, years ago when I owned my yoga studio, my brick and mortar yoga studio, it was in a downtown city, so it was kind of busy, and we once did actually have a pair of really nice winter boots stolen because we didn't lock the door. It was a one-room studio, and because we would have latecomers, and I would not always lock the door because I knew some people would be coming late. But then somebody came in off the street, stole somebody's shoes, and we had to come up with a clear policy from there. So for me in that example, I did a 5-minute grace period. 5 or 6, depending. I was never too picky about that. And we tried to communicate that to our students as best we could. So when there was signs on the door, when people first joined the class and joined the studio, we would let them know, hey, we lock the door for everybody's, and it's also helpful too, to communicate not just this is the policy, that's it, but to communicate it and frame it in a way that's really supportive and clear. So for example, our policy was, hey, we lock the door 5 minutes after the class starts so that we can ensure the safety and comfort and security of the students in our classes. And sometimes there's that little caveat because life will happen. So for those more emergency scenarios, which actually in my recollection didn't happen all that much, but if somebody ended up just being late, maybe they didn't come, so that's why these extra late people didn't happen, but they were allowed to knock on the door, of course, and we would let them in. But that was few and far between, and so that was less disruptive because people started to recognize, oh, right, this is the boundary. What you're doing as a teacher is setting a clear boundary for everybody. We lock the door 5 minutes after the class. Please do your best to arrive on time. And if that doesn't fit for some people, for those who really come to things at the latest possible minute, then they might have to adjust. You might have to lose a student or two, and that's okay. This is going to happen. This is part of the game, but it keeps as I mentioned, the security and safety and container of support for the people in your classes. So you get to show up as a teacher with this, situation dependent. What is my boundary? What am I okay with? Am I okay with waiting 10 minutes into the class, 5 minutes? Also, the 5-minute rule was kind of nice because then that's when you're getting people set up. Again, we're going into mindfulness, centering. You can quietly tiptoe out, lock the door, come back in. It's okay. This is just the part of the multitasking that we do as yoga teachers. Now, let's talk about the times that this may happen at your traditional yoga studio setting. And there's no actual clear policy about lateness, and so you're noticing this habit of maybe a handful of people coming in late all the time. The first thing that's helpful to do is talk to the studio owner or manager and ask them, hey, what are your thoughts on any sort of late policy? Because I'm finding it disruptive in my classes when people come even just a couple minutes late. I get thrown off as a teacher, the students in the class, I can see they're sort of grumbly, and so I'd love to have some sort of late policy. Now, this doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to be happy to enact one. So there will be some yoga studio owners who don't want to ruffle feathers. Maybe they want to really please all their customers. Then they might go, oh, well, I don't want anybody, it's hard enough coming to a yoga class. So if they come late, that's okay, because at least they're coming. If that's your studio owner's idea, and then they don't want to enact a late policy, then it does unfortunately fall onto you to communicate this as best you can with your students. So if you have a weekly class, the tricky thing, of course, is having a drop-in class. So if you communicate this with your students and go, hey, everybody, I would really love it if we could make it on time so that we can keep the energy of the class together, so that we're not disrupting our centering and mindfulness that we're doing at the beginning of the class. That's fine for your regular students, but with a drop-in scenario at a general yoga studio, you're going to have the odd person still coming in who doesn't already know that. So then there's a couple options, and this is going to be you dependent. I don't think there's a right way or wrong way. You get to decide what's right for you. One thing that you could do, so if you're in that scenario where it's out of your hands, people are just going to have to come in late because that's what the studio allows. First and foremost, the most important thing for yourself is to maybe accept that this is the scenario I'm in. I can't change it. I wish it was in another way. It does feel disruptive, but I'm going to do my best as the facilitator of this space to recognize there might be late people and they might be noisy. And how many times is there that one student who just unrolls their mat and slaps it down and kind of startles everybody. So what you can do as a facilitator, knowing that this may happen, is in these moments, and you have everybody, let's say, centering, quiet, you just calmly remind people, hey, let the world go on around you. We're taking this time at the beginning of this class. So this is like, let's say 5 minutes into the class, and there's still maybe people coming in, and just saying, recognize that the world is going on around us. Try to center your focus into the experience of your body in this moment. Try to center your focus on your breath. You may notice distractions, and this is normal and this is okay. Come back to your breath, come back to your body, so that you're acknowledging that, yeah, life happens. Things are going to happen outside of our control. We can't always have the most perfect yoga experience of silence and quiet studio space. So it's really using your yoga and your teaching to remind people to use their yoga and their teaching. Within that, I love personally to have people start classes, whether it's a late policy or not, but start classes on their backs. So that's another thing. So if people are lying down, and people usually, in my experience, love starting a class lying down, especially evening classes. And then we're on our backs. And then it's maybe easier for people to settle into their body, settle into that sense of, oh, right, I'm tuning inwards. Because sometimes I find sitting up comparatively, sometimes the yoga student and people in your class, when we're sitting up and we've just had a long day at work, and now I'm at my yoga class, and all these sounds and noises and people, there's something about sitting up that keeps us more alert, even though we're trying to be quiet, if that makes sense. So when you have people lie down on their back, they don't have to hold themselves up. The lying down helps them relax a little bit more and maybe won't be as distracted by the latecomers in the class. So use it, acknowledge it, don't deny it. It's not something you can change, it's something that you can work with. So I hope that helps give you a little bit more ideas. Clear communication to the people in your classes. There is no late policy and people are just going to be late. We just lovingly remind people about respect, about coming in quietly, about maybe gently rolling the mat down. And here's one last thing that I'll add with that. In that scenario, you could have a policy that if you see people, so if you're already in a meditation at the beginning of the class, and you see there's always the same 3 or 4 people, let's say, that come late, you can actually ask them to stop. Don't come in just yet, and just quietly be like, hi, thank you for being here. I appreciate that you're here, but we're just going to, do you mind just waiting in the lobby, or whatever this studio situation is, waiting in the lobby or waiting at the door at the back of the room just for the next couple minutes, so that we're not disrupting those who are already in their mindfulness and meditation. And then please come in and we'll be happy to have you join us. And I have a feeling if you do that once or twice with these folks, that they might be coming on time a little bit more often, right? So that's another interesting boundary that you can offer people, is being like, oh, thank you for being here. I recognize that you're late. I'd like you just to pause there, because I'm holding attention to the people who are here on time. Right or wrong, good or bad, you get to play around with this for yourself. It's a beautiful opportunity to also get comfortable with enacting boundaries and really communicating what you want and need as a teacher. I know as a yoga teacher, you want to feel confident about what you're teaching, how you're teaching, and who you're teaching. And so much of that really is informed by anatomy and movement understanding. But guess what? It does not have to be complex. And when you join Heart and Bones online teacher training, which by the way, is one of the leaders in anatomy informed yoga. It's true, we've been doing this since 2016. This course has been changing people's lives. And if you don't believe me, go read all of the different testimonials and feedback that we get. So if you want this to be you and update your teaching so that you can feel more confident and clear in what you're doing, then join our next cohort of the Heart and Bones Yoga Teacher Training. It's online, accessible, and might change your life.